Well, hello and welcome back to the Young Rugby Big Week. And for this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by England and Loughborough Lightning hooker Lark Davies. How are you, Lark? How's lockdown been for you?
Lockdown's been a different challenge, I think. It's been sort of a case of trying to train as much as I can with what I've got. But also I think the first difficulty was like that time away from not seeing family and things like that. And, you know, that time inside and making most of the once a day exercise. But I think obviously now it's eased a little bit. It's made it a little bit easier. Just sort of trying to make the best out of sort of not the best situation in terms of training wise. Probably never had this period to be able to rest a bit, look after the body a bit more than probably usual. So yeah, sort of looking at the positives of it.
Well, I'd like to get straight into things and have a look at your rugby journey so far. So where did everything start for you with rugby? What was your first sort of rugby memory as it was?
So my first rugby memory is probably that of being at school and having a new teacher come in and introduce tag rugby, and everyone was allowed to play, everyone was allowed to have a go. And so actually that was probably my first experience at about the age of 10. Previously I'd watched a lot of rugby sort of with my dad and family members, but hadn't really sort of known that I could be a part of it, I could play. And sort of as I got introduced to the tag side of things, sort of made me go and say to my parents, look, I want to go and see if there's any clubs about that, you know, have a girls section, or if I can go and play. And that sort of kind of started the journey off, really.
And when did you really decide that a career in rugby or professional, semi-professional rugby was something for you?
So I think I knew pretty early on just how much I enjoyed the game. And, you know, I think as a teenager, I was thinking, you know, I'd love for this to be my career, but I don't think at the time I knew that was really possible. And obviously the last couple of years of being full-time with England has been amazing. And probably something that as I was growing up, I didn't think would be possible. And so that's what makes it so special for young girls now coming into the sport, seeing, you know, that England do have players that are professional is really, really special. I think as a teenager, I thought, you know, I want to be the best I possibly can be. And at that point, I started making goals for myself where I thought, I want to make a World Cup. I want to make the England squad, those sort of things that were sort of those really long-term goals that I put in place, as well as the sort of little short-term ones that I had as well. So, yeah, I think it was a case of there was always that spark of wanting to do what I'm doing now.
And in 2017, you joined, as they were then, the Worcester Valkyries, and you were kind of thrown in the deep end a bit. In the Premier 15s, you became the captain of the team. Talk me through those that time that you had with Worcester and how that's developed you into the player you are today.
So I think even before Valkyries, you know, Worcester had always been my club. So when I talk about sort of searching for a club, when I was 13, I joined Worcester as sort of at the junior age group. And then obviously in 2017, we went across to Warriors and became Worcester Valkyries. But it was a really challenging couple of years, you know. It really developed my leadership skills, really challenged me in ways that I'd probably never been challenged before previously. You know, I'd had loads of experienced faces, played with loads of incredible players, you know. I had a front row of Rocky Clark, me and Laura Keats. So, you know, surrounded by experience, and that's just to mention a couple. And so, yeah, it was quite challenging, but, you know, the young players that were there at the time, you know, they had so much potential, and it was sort of a lot of the time I was asking myself, you know, how can I lead these girls? How can I do what's best for them, essentially, as well as me? And it, you know, eventually we did get those last couple of wins in the season, last season, but it was tough, you know, to go week in, week out, have some quite high score lines, and sort of to really be put against it for the first season. You know, it was something that really shaped me and probably made me work even harder than I already was, and sort of helped me to understand sort of what I needed to do a little bit better. It was tough, but it definitely helped shape me to be the player that I am now.
And after your time with Worcester, you joined Loughborough Lightning last season, and Loughborough have built one of the most successful sides in the women's game, in the modern women's game. But a few names really stand out to me in particular. What was it like to play with the likes of Emily Scarrett, Katie Day-McLean, and Sarah Hunter now for club, in addition to the time that you spent with them playing in the Red Roses side?
Yeah, I mean, the experience that those three players have is incredible, and they're phenomenal players to play with. So I think, you know, they really challenged me as a player, and sort of being able to play with them is something that's really, you know, special. And also I think, you know, that off-pitch support in terms of those are the girls that I was training with day in, day out. And like I said, constantly making sure that I better myself. You know, the feedback that all three of them give is, you know, second to none. So I know that I'm always going to get really good feedback from them. So running lines, or be it in the line out with Sun. So yeah, I think, you know, it's really been really special playing with those players. Obviously, Katie's making her way to Sale for the next season, but to play with Suns and Skazzy is really, really special. But you know, they're phenomenal players, and so they're really good to have that sort of drive you to be the best you can be, but also, you know, that bit of experience on the pitch and real rugby brains as well, so can give you some really good advice.
You've been part of some pretty historic moments in English rugby, but the most notable one has to be the Red Roses versus Barbarians game, where you scored a hat trick. Talk me through that game and the days leading up to it.
Yeah, so we always knew it's going to be a really historic event. You know, having that game at Twickenham before the men was something, you know, that we were all sort of really buzzing for, really excited for. To be fair, that hat trick comes from my forwards, you know, like that's off the back of a driving maul. They do, you know, all the hard work. I'm at the back to score it. But yeah, to be honest, it's always a team try when we get those drives over the line. And you know, it was a really special experience. Having the crowd there was amazing. And to score a hat trick at Twickenham, didn't really think as a front row forward that would probably ever happen, but it did. And you know, credit to the girls that day. I can just remember it being really, really hot that day as well. It was like the weather conditions. Like normally I'd be drying a towel, like the ball with a towel, because my hands were like wet from rain, but it was more so that it was just sweaty and humid. So the experience itself, and obviously the Barbars team that played against us had some huge names within it. And so it was a really special moment. And I think, you know, to play before the men was really special as well. I think that was a really important moment in terms of sort of generating a really good crowd, and was just an incredible day of rugby, really. And like you said, will be one of those historic moments.
Well, women's rugby has come so far in the recent years, but what do you think's next for the women's game?
I think sometimes that's a hard question, but I think, you know, if we can keep progression the way that we are, you know, you'd like to see that in however many years' time the club game could go professional. You know, quite often we use women's football as a really good example, and you know, that would be sort of really, really good in terms of if we could get that game being professional at club level. But you know, I think each year, and you know, the women's game takes really good strides in the right way. So next year's a really big year, World Cup year. So you know, I think next year will be really important for us as well, in terms of, you know, not just, you know, club wise, but England wise, putting in really good performances to get us in the right place for a World Cup. But I think also in terms of growing the game, you know, a World Cup year is massive in terms of fan base and making sure that, you know, the game gets promoted in the right way. And, you know, New Zealand are the hosts and they do it really well. So I think it's going to be a really exciting year. Obviously, with everything goes on at the moment, it's sort of taking each moment as it comes and doing what we can at the moment. But yeah, I think sort of the progress that we've seen in the last 3 years alone, I think we're going to see even more progress in that. And, you know, with the Premier 15s as well, looking for a title sponsor, I think that can be seen as really exciting. So, you know, getting a big sponsor in to make sure that Premier 15s keeps growing. It's grown massively over the last 3 years, but we want it to keep growing, and the game has progressed so much in those 3 years. You see young players coming through now, and the talent that they have is amazing. So I think we just need to keep going, keep progressing, and see what happens there.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Lark. It's been great to hear your story, and I hope you do stay well and stay safe during these troubling times. And I hope to catch up with you soon.
Thank you. I hope you do, and congratulations on all you're doing. To be
thank you very much.
As young as you are and doing what you're doing is amazing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, I think that's perfect. I'll get that up. Hopefully, I can't remember now. There's so much going on. I can't remember, but it's on some spreadsheet somewhere. And but I'll get that up. I think it will get a really good reception. It was a great talk, and yeah, really looking forward to getting that out there. But thank you so much for helping out. And I'll see you later then. See you.
Yep.
See you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.